Tony Stark is a genius billionaire playboy philanthropist, a peculiar individual who has conflicting values to that of a normal person. And it's these ego-centered values that created a really interesting character, especially when bouncing off other characters. He often fights with other people, but for a cause that is understandable, and portrays that Tony Stark deep down has a heart. He just doesn't know how to express this very well. And I think the nature of not knowing how to express his heart and then to come in terms with other people makes Iron Man 2 the best Iron Man movie. Now, both Iron Man 1 and 3 are spectacular movies. Iron Man 1, he is confronted with a mistake, a lie he has been living his whole life, and decides to change as a person, and he starts to become a compassionate person. In Iron Man 3, with the events of Avengers, he is now confronted with a situation he cannot understand or have control over for the first time in his life, and loses his identity. He rediscovers that he is Iron Man, not the suit, but the ability to create suits makes him so. However, both of these are very ego-centered themes, and it's about who is Iron Man. Although both have very strong and definitive themes portrayed in a dynamic way, I don't think that the humanity in Tony Stark is strong as Iron Man 2, as humanity is about relationship. So, I would like to dive into the relationship portrayed in Iron Man 2. First up, we have the love interest of Tony Stark, Pepper Potts. So, the scene I want to discuss is this scene. Tony Stark has been a mess to Pepper Potts. He's been unreasonable, irresponsible to her, and kept her in a tight spot. A CEO of a company which used to be run by a genius. Not an easy shoe to fill, and is in itself overwhelming. Furthermore, he has constantly caused trouble which Pepper has to take the fire out of. She's pissed against Tony, which she has every right to. I mean, come on. And Tony is still trying to make up for it, but cannot be upfront. He acts very differently to his usual and does things like buying souvenirs, and then he tries to talk things out, but is distracted and also constantly fidgets, where then she loses it. By the end of the conversation, in casual Marvel fashion, cracks out a joke to hide his insecurity. This is a behavior seen in attachment theory of an avoidant, humor to diffuse an emotional situation. Tony having characteristic of a theory that applies to real life shows how deep these characters are crafted and creates a very interesting situation. This situation of Pepper being offensive towards Tony really deepens their relationship to show that Pepper is not a static character but have troubles and emotions that she has to deal with. This is paid off later on in the movie when she screams that she cannot take it anymore. However, unlike Tony's previous reaction, he is able to confront her and accept her rejection. This shows the change that Tony Stark has gone through and shows the glimpse of the dynamic that these two will have. They have to put up with each other's value, and because they have opposing values, they constantly clash between each other and argue, which inevitably made these two break up at one point of their arc. MCU has a lot of love interest, however, most of these has not really worked. Well, not as much as these two. Peggy and Steve is probably the other best relationship we've seen, but as Peggy is unavailable, the dynamic stops at Steve constantly wanting to reconnect with Peggy. Thor and Jane is just bland, and relationship like Nakia and T'Challa, Doctor Strange and Christine have not worked as well as these two. Well, as of right now, the theme has never focused between their love interests. However, Tony has always been about Potts. His motivation has been about Potts, which is why she makes an appearance in Avengers movie, unlike other characters, and even her absence in Age of Ultron and Civil War adds a dynamic to the relationship. And I think the dynamic that makes these two so interesting was first introduced in Iron Man 2, as although Pepper does get her arc in the first Iron Man, she is pretty static. It was until Iron Man 2 where she was established as her own entity. And when I say an own entity, I mean that we could see a spin-off show focused on Pepper and how she deals with becoming the new CEO. I don't think this would have been possible for Iron Man 1. This milestone leads up to their beautiful relationship they have into the Endgame. I created a video focused on Pepper and Tony's relationship in Endgame, so please check that out. Creating their own entity. This value is a definitive one for me, which is why I also love Civil War, as that movie was the movie that made me feel all the side characters had their own entity. This applies to Rhodey in Iron Man 2. Not to neglect Terrence Howard, but I believe that Don Cheadle makes a better Rhodey than him. This is because in Iron Man 1, Rhodey felt more like either fanboying over Tony or babysitting Tony. Although we understood that Rhodey cared for Tony, I didn't really feel that Tony and Rhodey's relationship were on even grounds. And that is where Don's performance comes in. I've mentioned this in my other video, please check it out, but Don just stares at Robert for 15 seconds. How it's shot is definitely powerful. Favreau is amazing and is acted in a way that just shows that Rhodey cares for Tony. However, being avoidant that Tony is scared to make an intimate relationship with him and is unable to open up. He only opens up to people who isn't close, like Natasha. Despite this fact, Rhodey is still supportive of Tony. He tries to have his back until he, like Pepper, loses it. Both Pepper and Rhodey leaves Tony at a point in the movie. And they both have every reason to. As I've said, these two characters have their own entity. However, they don't leave Tony out of self-interest like the first Iron Man movie. They leave in a sense to protect Tony. Rhodey leaves to give the suit to the government, which is a much better decision than letting an army storm into Tony's house, and Pepper leaves because she doesn't hide from the work that Tony was meant to do. And when things go south, what do? Have Tony's back. Rhodey fights with Tony, and Pepper confronts Justin Hammer. No matter what fight they may get into, at the end of the day, they still care for each other, and Tony is able to finally come in terms with Pepper and Rhodey. Tony, although not entirely upfront, is able to admit that he was at fault, and it's these subtle moments that show that Tony has a heart and cares for these characters. He just doesn't know how to express them properly. So what is this movie about? If Iron Man 1 was about identifying himself, this movie is about identifying himself to the world. This is evident by the speech we have at the beginning of the movie. He isn't a character who will be swayed by external force. When he is confronted upon his death, he tries to come in terms with his relationship and values. He assigns Pepper to the next CEO and Rhodey as the next Iron Man so that the world can be a safe place without him. However, his means to go about this is terrible and almost loses his relationship. Then after he goes crazy, he is confronted with his dad. Tony is an avoidant, a person who avoids intimate relationship. This characteristic is deeply connected with his past, the past being his dad. However, through this video, he learns that his father indeed did care about Tony, which becomes the turning point. He tries to make things out with Pepper, a person who isn't avoidant, tries to confront an intimate relationship head on. Although this does not work, it is his first step. Then comes Rhodey. Rhodey is unable to trust Tony, but when he figures out that Tony was correct, Rhodey apologizes. They are able to finally come in terms. I hear a lot that this movie is messy. It has so much going on. Is it really though? This movie has an overarching theme. It's about dealing with the world. Good relationship, bad relationships. Finding out your ground onto the world. Some aren't dynamic, and it's not perfect, especially Vanka and Natasha. But when you hit that low point of your life, isn't life messy? Your life doesn't have just one thing going on. You have to deal with a lot of things on the plate. So why can't a movie do that? I don't really understand, because it has beautiful relation, and it has a beautiful conclusion. I mean, it takes 2 movies for a playboy to finally kiss his loved one. Isn't that powerful enough? And lastly, I have to mention Justin Hammer. I think Justin Hammer is a great villain. His acting is phenomenal, but I'm not talking about that part. Justin Hammer is like us, a regular man. He isn't great at what he does. This juxtaposition with Tony is really refreshing because we usually get villains who are powerful or insightful one way or other. They usually are on par or stronger than the heroes. However, Justin Hammer is a foil to Tony. It shows that Tony is outstanding. And compared to that, he is a man who can't do anything, but really tries. Tries to outsmart Tony, tries to get Tony's attention, but utterly fails. This character shows that Tony is a dominant character to the world up until the Avengers, which shows how much things have changed after the Avengers. And so that's it. Those were my analysis on why I love Iron Man 2. This movie is definitely not perfect, but it's a movie with a lot to love. What did you think of this movie? Please share your thoughts down below and like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time.